Good afternoon, all. Lee County Commissioner Workshop will convene. It's 1:30. Could we rise for the pledge, please? Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you all. I'll call to order the meeting, and I'm going to open up with a few comments for clarity. I don't know how there was any confusion in the budget workshops that we do, but unfortunately there was a couple of media outlets that indicated that we were using toll money to budget our deficit in the county budget, which anyone that's been doing this long enough to understand that transportation dollars are for transportation. It's an enterprise fund, and there's a difference between the general fund and an enterprise fund. And we're not allowed to basically take transportation money and use it for anything other than transportation. So just for correction, I know that some people are eager to get the story out, but let's just make sure it's factually correct. The general fund pays for the majority of the expenditures here. If anything, the news should have been that the general fund many times has subsidized the transportation fund, not the other way around. We've never done the opposite and never do. It's unfortunate because the process we go through here is to be very early and try to put together the data necessary so we as commissioners can look at it and have really productive conversations. As you'll see in this workshop, the budget is firmer as we get closer to reality. We get closer to our July estimates. We get closer to having department heads put their information in and we go through. I think everyone will clearly indicate and see that we've done an awful lot of adjustments in this budget. To the tune of, one could say that we've cut $19 million worth of expenditures because we're bringing in a budget that certainly does not have much of a deficit at all. And I think some of the things that people just need to be clear of is before any of the commissioners were here, we do have a balloon payment that is due that's $15 million. So let's remember that we inherited that obligation that someone made a long time ago, and we're just cash flowing it in this year. So $15 million would go a long way if that cash flow payment did not to be made. So just for clarity purposes, we don't take any money from any enterprise fund and switch it back. And it's certainly not transportation. So the story was disturbing when they said we're going to raise tolls to balance our budget. And I don't remember having that conversation whatsoever. So I just want some clarity for the record. I think that's important to do so. I appreciate all commissioners' comments and points. I think we've done a great job. I'll kick it over to the county manager. I just wanted to clarify some of the unfortunate information that's out there.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and well said. Today we have the first continuation budget. Following our April 1st and June 3rd meetings with the board regarding the CIP as well as the transportation CIP and our capital improvement projects, we have taken all the direction that the board has given us and tried to come in without a deficit. So with that being said, I'd like to turn it over to Pete to present.
Good afternoon, commissioners. So this is your first look at operating budgets. You know, we come, as the commissioner, as the chairman said, we come in April with kind of a very broad, we put some inputs into a model. It's very broad, but at that point we don't have actual revenues and we don't have departmental budgets yet. We're just kind of doing this on a percentage basis. So, you know, that kind of took on a life of its own, and maybe we rethink that in future years. But since then, as budgets came in, as in we've finally had a preliminary estimate of the revenues, we've done quite a bit of cutting. And when I say quite a bit of cutting that won't have impact on service levels. But it's a combination of, you know, need to haves versus want to haves, and also it's also a combination of timing for certain projects. Can we put this project in a different year so it can help us out this year and vice versa? So I wanted to preface that, you know, unfortunately the TV media isn't here, but you know, the idea that we could ever use tolls to pay for county operations, general fund operations. It just can't be done. The bondholders would not accept that. It's not good fiscal policy. Last time I know you had some difficulty hearing me, so if you do, just let me know. I slouched over most of the workshop, and I was widely mocked by my colleagues for that. So there's nothing unusual about that. So, commissioners, this just places us where we are. You can see we had a 10-mile canal workshop in February. Then the budget assumptions in April. We did capital improvement program 2 weeks ago, and now here we are with the first draft. There's lots of time for the budget. There's lots of time to refine budgets if we need to, and also we will find out our final tax assessment July 1st, and then we will rerun all of our models so that we factor that into budgets. I'm going to skip this and I'll come right back to it. So what I want to show here is I'm happy, and I hope you're happy with the progress we've made. We have total revenues of $722 million and total expenses of $722 million in the general fund. So that's good. As you can see, we're using a state loan, the $25 million state loan we received, to fill what I would call a cash flow gap of $1.7 million. And if I can expand upon that, right after the storm, while the property tax estimates weren't what they had been, they were still pretty high because of reconstruction, and also our sales tax was very high. You had a combination of reconstruction, and you had also a combination of sales tax based on all the services that came and flocked to the county and were providing revenue for that. We knew that was going to go away, and I'll show you in the previous slide. You can see that our sources other than property taxes have basically flattened out in primarily all of our funds. So we knew that we didn't have to use this $25 million right away, but now is the time to use it to soften the landing of what we're potentially going to experience over the next couple of years. And then you can see and I'm going to focus on the unincorporated MSTU and the general fund. They're two of our largest property tax funds. And you can see that we're using about $3.7 million of the state loan to balance that fund and for cash flow. Now, when I go back, just to harken back to what I said about revenues, the 4.84% in revenue and tax base increase that we experienced this year results in $31 million of revenues. You can see our other revenues in the general fund have flattened out. They're flat. All of state revenue sharing, sales tax sharing, a lot of those revenues have flattened out. So that's kind of an indication of where we're going and why we have to be careful the next couple of years. And you're experiencing something similar in the unincorporated MSTU. So what we're going to do is track that $25 million, so commissioners know exactly where that money is going. And right now, while those are cash flow deficits, that's not a lot when you consider the size of the funds, particularly the general fund. So we will have used about $5.4 million of that. So you can see the state loan is now down to 19.6, and then you have total reserves of roughly $91 million. So getting into the operating budgets, and this is every budget in the general fund with a total increase at the bottom line of 4.32%, which is pretty good in a community and a county our size. And let me just highlight a few things here. I believe the constitutionals and courts made a really good effort in coming in with really fiscally responsible budgets. The sheriff's office is always the biggest budget, and law enforcement's one of the top priorities for the board. So you can see that their increase is 5.47%, and that includes a 5% pay increase, which is roughly $10 million, and then an additional $6 million of a combination of FRS contributions for high-risk deputies for the Florida retirement system, increase in their health care. Everybody's experiencing increase in health care. Jail medical, and then some other operating costs. Public safety, second largest in the general fund, and I do want to say that we have factored in the board approval this morning of the EMS employee union contract. So if we were to take that out, public safety actually came in with a slight decrease, but we put that in here to show that is an obligation that we are going to be required to pay and has been approved by the board, and also to show that, when you look at the two public safety departments in the general fund, they're in parity, which that's something we want. We want parity in the general fund so that one entity doesn't start, because we all have to share, we all have to make it up or make it work, and so one entity doesn't start to absorb a majority of revenues. Without that increase in public safety for the salaries, departmental budgets in the general fund came in at 1%. I think that's really good and noteworthy. Here's something. This is a mandate this is our Medicaid share. We're told by the state what our contribution to Medicaid is going to be. That's $2.6 million. So it's gone up the last couple of years kind of significantly, and there's not much we can do about that, but I just point that out. It's $2.6 million we have to absorb and make sure we're able to pay that. Also, if you look down here, our major maintenance this year's $33.3 million. Next year it's $34.9 million. So it's basically a flat major maintenance budget. We're not skimping on major maintenance, but we did look at some things that we could push out, or some things that we could value engineer, some things we didn't need right away. And that being a flat budget, I talked about that quite a bit June 3rd, because it was significantly higher. I think facilities has done a really good job, as well as the constitutionals and departments, of being as realistic as they can of what is absolutely needed. Commissioners, this is the unincorporated MSTU. Again, this is the cost side, not the revenues. And you can see that the departments that are in that fund did have an increase. That's inflationary costs primarily. School resource officers, that we pay for the school resource officers out of the unincorporated MSTU for school resource officers in the unincorporated area. For the schools in the unincorporated area that we provide. That's funded 50% through the school district, 50% through the county. They're adding 5 school resource officers this year, just based on class size and school size, and then also that includes a 5% increase for those employees. And then transfer to DOT, you can see that's gone up quite a bit, and that's a combination of the, kind of writ large. That is, this is the basically general subsidy to the Transportation Trust Fund, and this is transferred to that to make our DOT operations work. And writ large, this has been going up over time because as cities incorporate. We keep quite a bit of roads within the cities. So this isn't just roads, limited to the unincorporated area. We keep major thoroughfares and things that are vital to the countywide network in this fund. So you can see you've got a pretty small tax base and a smaller number of homeowners and businesses that are paying for the majority of the not the majority, but for a lot of roadway maintenance that is running through cities, and that's just an evolution of how we've gone about this. The increase next year is a combination of depressed, when I say depressed, flattening out of revenues in the Transportation Trust, as well as some increased costs primarily related to sidewalk repair. We have a lot of sidewalks that, it's a harsh environment for sidewalks, and a lot of our sidewalks are getting old, so we have a lot of sidewalk repair, and then also landscape maintenance and landscaping.
Chairman, can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So, am I hearing you right? Are you saying we're taxing the people who live in unincorporated Lee to fix roads for people who live in cities?
Yes.
Can we not do that anymore? That doesn't seem fair.
Well, Commissioner, I think the short answer is if the cities would agree to pay for those roads within their jurisdiction, then maybe we could do that. But you'd have to work through a bunch of agreements to turn those roads over to the cities, and then you would have a combination of the county, then the city, then back to the county, and that could be problematic. And I don't know if
So are these roads that are county-maintained roads, but they're within cities?
correct.
Kind of like, for an example, Del Prado, but
Yes.
it's within Cape Coral?
Yes.
But the funds...
Corkscrew Road within Estero.
So, but the funds that we're using to maintain the county-maintained roads, but that are within cities, are funds that we'll collect from unincorporated Lee?
Correct.
I would love to see a different plan for that. That doesn't feel fair to me if I was a resident of unincorporated Lee to have to subsidize roads that are within a city. I mean, now clearly we all drive all over the place, but I guess that doesn't feel right to me.
If you don't mind, I respect the idea, but it kind of strikes me like the property tax, make property taxes go away. The services still have to exist, so there would just be a different label of a task or a cost. It wouldn't be free for some people or cost more for others. I mean, there's lots of these county roads, like you say, Del Prado, and things that we all travel over. People don't live their whole life within a city or one or the other. I think it's kind of a shared common resource. I understand the intent of the spirit of what you're talking about. I just think it would raise another line item somewhere else, and the taxpayer's total tax bill would be the same, only it would be labeled differently.
But we do collect a countywide gas tax, right? That really we initially were using just countywide gas taxes to maintain roads. I mean, I thought that's kind of why this transfer used to be very small. It was mostly the gas taxes that funded road maintenance, right, back then?
Yes, a combination of that, Commissioner, and something that the county manager pointed out is that we do use we have, not for the last couple of years, but we do use general funds for road maintenance. We have that growth increment funding, and that over the last however many years, you can see that it runs about $12 million a year, and it was even in place before 18-19. We do transfer general funds into the Transportation Trust. So it's not that no countywide money goes in the Transportation Trust.
Yeah, I mean, I was fine with obviously the GIF, but I guess I missed where again. I don't know that the board had an opportunity to make a policy call on did we want to take unincorporated money and put it into the cities. I always thought that's why cities become cities, so that they can take care of their roads within their city and bring them to the level they want to take them to. If that's a higher level than the base level of service we offer, we usually are supposedly base level, core level of service, and sometimes cities want more than that, and so they create their own tax base to do that. And okay, I mean, you can continue with your presentation. I was really surprised. This doesn't seem like a fair setup to me, and I guess I'm surprised at why it's grown. I would love to see the detail on why it's grown so much over the years too.
Mr. Chair?
Sure.
Commissioner, we can give you a breakdown on that. I think the difficulty is, and Pete touched on it a bit, is when an entity incorporates, one of the things we negotiate is potentially them taking over roads. That isn't always successful. I think we waited a number of years where we worked out with Estero, the village of Estero, to take over. What was the name of that road? I can't remember right.
Estero Boulevard or something like that?
No, it's
Estero Parkway.
Yeah, we talked. Well, we have Estero Parkway, but it's the other road that they took over. But regardless, it was a number of years after they became a municipality that we were able to negotiate that piece. But we still have roads that run through Estero where we run into this issue where they do advanced maintenance or plantings, landscaping, and we do the core level of service, and then there's that complaint from the community. So we do run into that. It's always been difficult to get the municipalities to agree to take over the roads within their municipality. So we typically get stuck with them. On Cape Coral or Del Prado, one of the issues is right after a few years ago, they maintained the landscaping. And then they gave that up during the downturn. They couldn't afford it, and then it became our issue again, and we went back to core level. So all those things are at play. So there is some difficulty there to Pete's point, there would have to be some negotiation from this board to their councils to talk about potentially them taking over those roads. We're still, unfortunately, overseeing all those, a majority of them.
So it sounds like you as the county is open-minded to those transfer agreements if the cities were so
Yes.
willing.
The easy answer is yes.
Right?
I mean, a couple of points, and Commissioner, I don't disagree with what you're saying. You know, conceptually, it should work that way. The reality is that, you know, everyone always says they don't want to be part of unincorporated county, but every municipality, certainly in the last 5 or 6 months, have had not a problem coming to my office looking for X, Y, Z. You know, continue to do that. Let's recognize that we are transferring general dollars over to the MSTU. I mean, we're transferring the dollars to fund that. That's where the money comes from. You know, the MSTU is basically, you know, we're subsidizing through the general fund. You know, so to your point, we are basically taking care of a road because our partner doesn't have the ability or feel it's the same priority. And ergo, it becomes our problem. So the independence, I'm all for, but independence has a price. And I'm always interested that infrastructure seems to be one that just is forgotten.
Yeah, I mean, look, we obviously have to get some work done. So I'm willing to move on from the point. Just one way to think about it differently, maybe I can articulate this, is everyone pays into the general fund.
Yep.
If you live in Lee County, you pay into the general fund whether you live in a city or whether you live in unincorporated Lee.
Yep.
So the general fund should pay for those general county roads then that are county maintained roads, whereas the only people who pay into the unincorporated MSTU are unincorporated Lee residents. And so I think it's probably more fair if we're going to say these are county maintained roads used by everybody, whether you live inside or outside of the city, then you should probably use the revenue source, the general fund, to cover that, as opposed to saying, no, we're only going to use the revenue that we collect just from unincorporated Lee to cover that. That's feels like a more fair setup. Now, saying that, I don't know where we would find $40 million in the general fund, but I'm surprised to hear that this is the setup, that's all.
I also, along your point of more information, we basically combine all the unincorporated areas into one area.
Right.
Where if you were to break down Lehigh or Boca or Captiva, and they were all their own entity, if you will, you'd probably see where the 40 million gets accumulated. Because unfortunately, when you consolidate 6 or 7 different parts into the MSTU, that's how you consolidate, and that number is actually lower. But I think if you looked at each part, you'd find bigger deficits.
Yeah.
And then you would, that entity, that area might feel better because when they come in, and you've been here a lot longer than I have, where they walk in and say, I'm not getting anything for my money. Clearly to show, here's the dollars you bring in, and everyone always goes to the next extreme where we then say, I want to incorporate. But now we're back to the same situation. You're incorporated, you have your independence, but when it comes to certain obligations that you've committed to, we end up still bearing that burden, which I didn't think we envisioned when we first went into it. So I understand your point of view, and I share your point of view. I don't know how to fix it.
Let me ask this question. So some of this 40.2 million, though, is that going to maintain the roads also in unincorporated Lee? Like, so if I live in Waterway Estates in North Fort Myers, unincorporated Lee County, and the road needs to be repaved in front of my house, it's coming out of that 40.2 million?
Yes.
If I live in Lehigh Acres, where we have a pretty extensive road repaving program, we're spending like $5 million a year, is it coming out of that 40.2 million?
Yes.
Yes, okay, so is it fair to say that the majority of this is going to unincorporated Lee road improvements then?
Yes.
Okay, all right, thank you. That helps me feel better.
Thanks, Pete. Thank you.
Can I ask one
Absolutely.
different question, please?
Over here.
Same slide. This SRO officer, 50% expense, is this the net of 50%, the $7 million? Or is that the gross number that we split with the school district?
That is the net number. That's the county's.
That's our half of
yeah.
the money? It's
Yes.
$14 million
The
total?
School district has $7 million of that also.
Okay, I just want to make sure that it wasn't a gross number and there was a revenue somewhere else I missed. Thank you.
So this summarizes where we are today, commissioners, and I think a couple things. One is I think we're in good shape. We will continue to refine budgets as we go through July before we come back to you in August for the second draft. We will receive the final tax base on July 1st, which I'm not projecting anything, but that has typically been a bump up from the June 1st as the property appraiser continues to refine his numbers. So once we get those numbers, we will put them into the budget models and show you where we are. We do 5-year forecasts in the general fund and the unincorporated MSTU. The State Revenue Estimating Conference usually does a series of ad valorem or property tax forecasts in July, so we'll wait for that. Right now I don't have anything that I could dream up that would make sense for what a forecast would be, but they certainly can. They have economists and they have a lot of other people that are involved in overall trends, and so I'll come back with whatever information we have on that. And so this is the first draft we've done. Like the commissioner said, we've probably done about $18 million of, when I say cutting, what I'm saying is that we've right-sized our budgets to make sure we're living within the revenues provided with as little, and as far as I know, no service level impact at this point. This is, Commissioner, this is all of the operating budgets for the entire county, $769 million. I just show you this because we're focusing on the property tax revenue funds today, but there are other, you have your enterprise funds, the two biggies being solid waste and utilities, and you have special revenue funds, VCB, libraries has its own tax rate. So what I want to show you is that's a 4.9% increase, but if you take the enterprise funds away, particularly solid waste and utilities, which are subject to inflationary pressures that you're not going to see in a household. You know, this is chemicals, this is contractual arrangements, this is other things. If you were to remove those, and I can go through that at some point with you all, when you remove that out of the budgets, you can see overall all the county departments came in, other than the two large enterprise funds, at a 2.7% increase, which is really good. We really haven't hit that, that target in many, many years. So I think you can be confident and comfortable that we are going through budgets and we're making sure that we prepare for what's going to come next year and afterwards. I do want to say that we do want to use, it'd be my recommendation that we use the state loan over the next 2 years to have a softer landing as the increase in the tax base declines. Again, we don't stop cutbacks or freezing positions or whatever on September 30th. We continue to do that throughout the year. So I think if we used, a half or more of that this year and then another half in 26, 27, I think you'd be in really good shape. We do want to use that for cash flow. That was what it was intended. Yes, it took a couple of years, but we knew in a couple of years that kind of surge in revenues from sales tax and property tax after the storm would not last, and here we are. And so that's where we find ourselves. I'll let tax the revenue side of things, and then we'll come back for a second draft on August 5th.
Couple of questions, Pete. Could you remind us what a 1% increase in property taxes would be if July 1st is so kind to us to give us a
It would be $5 million.
$5 million. So essentially, if we were to go up 1%, then there's no such thing as a cash flow shortage.
Yep.
Okay. Secondarily, in the process you go through, I mean, I appreciate the enterprise funds, solid waste, and utilities, but transportation is still significant in itself. So we want to make sure we understand that in that process, and we're trying to do everything we can. Does this have the budget you've prepared, does it have an increase for employees here?
For employees?
raise
It does
for the
not. So the only increase right now is for the paramedics and EMTs. And if you were to consider an increase for other employees in the general fund, it would be about $1 million per percent. So if you were to mirror the sheriff's office, 5% would be about $5 million.
Can we at least look at what that looks like in the next presentation, just to understand in black and white? Because I think there'll be great clarity come July 1st. I think there'll be great clarity. The second thing I wouldn't mind doing is maybe next year, when we utilize that state loan, we do forecast no different, maybe 3 years from then, paying that back over maybe a 5-year period of time. So we show how we pay that back inside of cash flow.
Absolutely, Commissioner. Sense. We'll bring that back to you.
Yeah. I just want to see the clarity of the situations we have in front of us, because I am certainly strongly advocate that we make sure we continue to take care of the great employees we have here. So, and I know all the commissioners are, I just want to see it black and white. That's really what I'm looking for. And then, the last thing is I can't thank staff enough in all you've done and bring this in. I mean, I think people don't realize that we're running a $2.5 billion enterprise here. And that's the size of when you bring the enterprise funds into this. The other interesting thing is you and I met in briefings. We don't have an opportunity to talk. So I bring it here. And the last time that Lee County raised the millage rate was back in 1999. And the millage rate was 5.44. Our millage rate is 3.7. So that's 1.7% decrease in 26 years with no increase, nothing, over a 26-year period of time. I don't know how many people could say that nothing's gone up in 26 years. But I commend all the commissioners that came way before me to do the things you did, because 3.7 for a $700 million budget is a really low millage rate. When you look at the assessed values, what we do here. But we've been able to sustain everything. And unfortunately, I think when people read about maybe having a conversation, we can't do anything unless we have this conversation. you know, and it may be an uncomfortable conversation, but at least we look at options, and doesn't mean we're making a decision. We're just looking at options, and data is really important for you to make effective decisions. All I'm trying to do, and, you know, we need to sit at this table and have the conversations. It's sometimes difficult to be in this position when you read some of the inaccurate information that's out there. I think we're all trying to do this, and we're all taxpayers, so we don't have these conversations lightly. I don't know anyone that wants to pay any more. I like paying less, always have. So just some of those points I just think are going to be helpful to us, and those are some of my own individual desires to see in the subsequent meeting. Any other comments, points?
Yeah, and I can agree with you. We have these open discussions, and that's the only time we can have any of them. You know, people like to sensationalize what we say, you know, in the moment. But I'm an entrepreneur and a businessman, and so that means I'm open-minded to whatever opportunity comes before me. It doesn't mean I'm going to act on all of them, right? It just means you're going to evaluate and measure something. You can't manage what you can't measure, so you have to know what those evaluations and criteria are going to, the ripple effects of what those are going to be, and find out what's best. And we've discussed things that where taxpayers could choose to tax themselves, so to speak, if they wanted to add a 0.5% sales tax, then the voter would have a referendum to make those decisions as an informed voter. So that doesn't mean we're imposing our will on them for that. It means we would be offering up an opportunity if that discussion was had. So we have to have this open forum, right? But it doesn't mean we're making a final decision in that moment, but just by broaching the subject, as you say. So I did want to point out a couple things on that last slide. So we started off our first budget, my first budget meeting in April. We were $13 million upside down. And then the property appraiser report put us another $5 million in the hole, right? The preliminary one that could be raised. But staff did find the first $13 million to only put us at the 5.4 number now. Is that correct? We were $13 million upside down in your first April presentation. Then the property appraiser report put us another $5 million in the hole.
Correct.
Right? Because it came in a percentage point less than we forecast, right? But since then, you've turned that $18 million deficit into 5.4?
1.67 million.
So the general fund was 18 million, now we're down to 1.6. So it was just the general fund, we're talking about what the deficit was.
We have two deficits, we're still up.
Yeah, I mean, but when we were talking about apples to apples, it was 18
Okay,
million.
so the
in
1.6
general.
was the 18 million.
18, so we
I don't
got
know
from
what the-
18 to 1.6.
I don't know what the 3.7 million
I didn't
was
either. But
last time. I
the
didn't see that
conversation we
breakdown.
had was all about the general.
Okay, so it's even better than I thought. I just didn't know about the side deficit, so to speak. Was that broken out before, the 3.7? Was that in this?
So,
previous
Commissioners, the general fund cash flow deficit is 1.7 million, unincorporated is 3.7, so that's the 5.4 million you're talking about that we intend to use from the $25 million loan.
Yeah, the question, Pete.
The $18 million
what was it
deficit
before?
we had.
What was the MSTU deficit before? That's all. Was it larger than 3.7?
I don't know off the top of my head on that one. I can get back to you.
Those two numbers compared or split out before now. So I thought that's where I thought the 5.4 was the 18 million. So this description of a side deficit in the MSTU category is new to me, and I just didn't understand if we had discussed that before and I missed it, I wanted to clarify. I just didn't know how that may have been relayed to us in the past. So I'm taking in a lot of new information on this, but I wanted to applaud the team's efforts for that first pass cut. If it was 16 million, I mean, I was very encouraged when you came in with that truing up of the budget numbers and to see all that. I did see, just to give a shout out to some of the key people around here, county admin came down 5%, and county commissioners were $57,000 reduced in our budget, so you can quote me on that.
Any other points of information you might need for the next time we get together?
So we're continuing to review all these and call these numbers out, and we're waiting for the final report
Correct.
in July, so this is We're pretty darn close
Well,
right now.
if I may, Mr. Chair, you said more information we might want or need or whatever. So here's my thoughts on this. I think it's a good start. I don't know that I'm 100% happy with it yet. I would say the question I have is this revenue amount for property tax purposes was set based on values from January 1st of this year.
Correct.
So my question would be, what do we think property values have done since January 1st of this year, halfway through the year? I think based on the real estate reports I've read, they've continued to come down. So looking ahead, what do we think next January 1st is going to look like? I don't see anything in the future that tells me they're going to come back up or rebound between now and next January 1st. So I think the more headway we make this year towards preparing for what will be a pretty rough year next year budget-wise, I think the better off we'll be. That doesn't mean that we, go and create a very austere budget, but maybe we continue to look for ways to limit the spending increases this year. I mean, because really we're still looking at an increase in spending this year. We have cut the increase in spending, but we're still looking at an increase in spending. And so I guess that's why I say I think it's a good start. I would like to see some other ways in light of what may happen next January 1st for us to soften that blow even more. And that's my take on it, I guess.
I think that's more than prudent. I think we continue to refine this. I think we could look at the information that Pete's given us. I think we'd start to look to see if there's any other opportunities to do so. Anytime you could reduce your fixed costs is only going to be easier for the next coming years. In my conversations with Pete, and that's why it's important for us to all chat, I had the same concerns you do, and I'm sure we all do, about what next year looks like. That's why the conversation in the last meeting was, I was very aggressive in indicating we should look at the state fund and that loan and utilize it, because I do anticipate this year, next year, whatever we do to tighten it, but I don't know what we do about next year at all. So if we could just use that strategically and then put it in cash flow, with a 5-year payback, a couple of years from now, when we get through this downturn, we're able to do so. So, it's what we do in the business world when we have cash flow ups and downs. But I agree, I'm very pleased with what we've done thus far. I think we continue to have the ability to tighten things and do things. And I'm all for reducing our fixed overhead. So it's just easy to get through in the future. So I commend staff, and I can't thank you enough, because it's been interesting, when you have the conversations you do, and the conversation we had last meeting were important to try to guide us through these difficult couple of years. And it's going to be, next year will be ugly. I mean, as long as we've sat up here, I go back to the ugliest years were in 07 and 08 when I was in office. So that was a difficult time. But I have a feeling that, it's going to be some challenging years. The good news is that I think we're on momentum of cutting, and I think the good news is that we have the opportunity to continue to refine this. I think in each one of our briefings we go through. I mean, I think as you see, you pointed out, Commissioner Hammond, increases are still here, so you could look at the departments and have the inquiries you want to about those, and are there any other opportunities?
No, if I may say, we're certainly not done. I was just commending them on a great first pass. I mean, for 2 weeks you found $16 million, so we have a lot of weeks left to keep attacking this, But I'm not saying take your foot off the gas on the fact, finding the budget money and making sure that the want-tos and need-tos are being addressed on a second, third, fourth pass. So.
Forecasts are always very difficult to do. They become cloudier and cloudier as you go out in time, because you're making assumptions that change all the time. I mean, if you would have had this conversation 2 years ago, that we're going to have a market that's probably more of a buyer's market, not a seller's market, we probably wouldn't have believed that. But that's the ebbs and flows of real estate. Been around it long enough to know so.
Let me just ask it. It won't make me any friends, but do we want to reach out to the constitutionals who own half of this spending and say, hey, great start, could you find some more efficiencies?
Well, I mean, I think yes. Your answer to that question is, I mean,
Second motion.
in the interactions I've had with some of the bigger parts of the constitutionals was to break down, what a flat budget looked like, and then, what are you looking for to have it go up? And one of the factors we're going to run into is, raises, or, if we even have a flat, we give 1%, it's going to increase. If we give 2%, it's going to increase at 3%. So the biggest constitutional office came in with a flat budget, and they said, okay, here's some projects, and then here's an increase. It's our prerogative to certainly talk and say, okay, is there any way we could defer that, or do we need to do that? Those are the opportunities we'll continue to have, and I think Pete already started that, but I look forward to the input of the board to try to do those things. It's a tight year, and listen, we've always said, we'll do that, but I also want to make sure that as the people that are going through and doing the yeoman's work, we keep them front and center in our vision as we go through this, because they're the keystone and really key players to this.
To that end, I wanted to, again, the clerk's office came in with a budget reduction in the departments. I was encouraging everybody to find a 5% reduction in strategic planning. I know we're continuing to chew away at that as best we can. I spoke to the property appraiser last week at another club meeting, and I asked him if he was going to beat Kevin's number, and he couldn't quite get there yet. And but he said the biggest thing that he ran into was health insurance rate increases. Was about a 4% raise or 4% cost out of the plus or minus 6% budget increase he had turned into us. And but he also said that he didn't give his staff raises this year because covering the health insurance increase for them without pushing back on their rates was in fact by default a raise for them, because we didn't ask them to participate in the additional cost of the premium. So just throwing that out there, that's kind of the decisions we talk about 07, 08, when your life changed as a business owner and employees and all the hard things you talk about, those were things that were tabled. But I wanted to mention the health insurance increase is something that's...
I think it's reasonable to look at your, I go back to those days and looked at a negative and said, I don't know how to, even when I gave 0, and that was hard to give people 0% increases, I was still operating in a negative. So I wasn't even at par in trying to deal with a 5 or 6 or 10% negative. Kind of hard to do that. And to David's point, the fringe benefits are very expensive and continue to be. As an individual business owner, I can tell you the biggest line item increase in my company's budgets are always health insurance. It's insurance in general, but health insurance just continues to lead. That workers' comp continue to blow me away in what we pay and the increases that are in that world.
Fleet insurance has gone up tremendously last few years too. There's less carriers.
All insurances have. I think, that's part of the problem. But I appreciate the work, Pete. Any other things we might need to help us bring this? So if you could, obviously July we'll know the number, which is great. Obviously, I'd, like to just see what an increase for staff does relative to what the sheriff baked in, and we'll look at what we have to deal with, and we'll make some tough calls when we have all the factual data in front of us. I look forward to July 1st, and again, it would just be further along with more clarity, and I look forward to discussions in this room. Anything else we need today? Can you manage I cover everything?
Yes, sir.
All right, I'll call for an adjournment. Thank you all.